Rodrigo Valente was a man who had it all, or so the press said. At 38, he was the CEO of one of Brazil's largest technology companies, the owner of a fortune that placed him among the richest in the country. Brunette, with piercing green eyes and a smile that seemed sculpted to disarm anyone, he was a coveted bachelor who appeared on the covers of magazines. But behind the facade of success, Rodrigo carried an emptiness that even he couldn't explain. Life had become too predictable for him. Until that night. It was a hot summer Friday in Sao Paulo, and Rodrigo was at an exclusive dinner atop a skyscraper, surrounded by equally rich and bored friends. The whiskey trickled down their throats, the laughter echoed, and boredom hung in the air like an invisible cloud. That's when Gabriel, his best friend since childhood and an incorrigible gambler, threw down the gauntlet. "You always say that money buys everything," Rodrigo said, Gabriel twirling the crystal glass between his fingers. "But what if I prove to you that it doesn't? I bet you $1 million that you don't have the courage to marry a woman you've never seen before. I choose you. Accept, and the wedding takes place in a week." The others around the table laughed, thinking it was just another joke by Gabriel. But Rodrigo, with the wounded pride and hot blood of someone who never backs down in the face of a challenge, raised his glass and replied, "Deal. But if I win, you pay me double." The deal was sealed with a handshake and a toast. No one believed it would be anything more than drunken bravado, but Gabriel was a man of his word. The next morning, while Rodrigo was having coffee in his penthouse overlooking Avenida Paulista, the phone rang. It was Gabriel, his voice full of malice. "I found her. Her name is Mariana. 28 years old, brunette, brown eyes, curves that would make anyone lose their mind. There's just one detail: she agreed to the wedding for a reason she didn't tell me. Good luck, buddy. The registry office is scheduled for Friday." Rodrigo hung up the phone with a mixture of disbelief and adrenaline. He didn't know whether to laugh or swear at Gabriel, but one thing was certain: the game was on, and he wasn't going to give up. Throughout the week, he tried to get more information out of his friend, but Gabriel would only say, "You'll see when the time comes. Trust me." On Friday, the registry office was ready. Rodrigo put on an impeccable suit, adjusted the Rolex on his wrist, and drove his Porsche to the venue. His heart was beating faster than he'd like to admit. It wasn't fear, but wild curiosity. Who was this woman? Why would she agree to something so insane? When he arrived, he saw a figure standing with her back to him near the notary's counter. She was dressed simply but elegantly, with long brown hair falling in waves down her back, a silhouette that seemed to have been drawn with care. She turned, and Rodrigo's eyes met hers. Mariana was more than Gabriel had described. Her brown eyes had a depth that caught him off guard, and her full lips curved into a shy smile that contrasted with the boldness of the situation. "You're Rodrigo, right?" Her voice was soft but firm. He nodded, trying to disguise the impact she had made. "And you're Mariana? Nice to meet you, my future wife," he smiled, trying to bring lightness to the absurdity. The wedding was quick: signatures, witnesses, Gabriel included with a triumphant smile, and that was it. In less than an hour, Rodrigo Valente was married to a complete stranger. There was no time for questions or hesitation. He took her to his mansion in Jordan's, a modern home with an infinity pool and rooms that looked like they were straight out of a luxury catalog. During the journey, they exchanged few words. Mariana seemed nervous but maintained a serene posture that intrigued him. "Why did you agree to this?" he asked as he parked the car in the garage. She hesitated, looking down at her hands in her lap. "Let's just say I needed something that only you can give me. It's not just the money, but let's talk about it later." Rodrigo frowned but didn't insist. The evening had only just begun, and he had other plans in mind. He invited her home for dinner, a meal prepared by his private chef. As they ate, the tension between them grew. Every look, every gesture seemed charged with electricity. Mariana laughed at his stories about his travels, and he was fascinated by the way she moved her hands when she spoke. When dinner was over, Rodrigo stood up and held out his hand. "Would you like to see the rest of the house, including the bedroom?" She blushed but accepted his hand. They walked up the stairs in silence, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the marble. The master bedroom was a king-size bed, soft lights, and a balcony overlooking the illuminated city. Rodrigo closed the door behind them and approached, smelling her perfume, something sweet with a hint of jasmine. "I know this is crazy," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "Ever since I saw you, I can't stop thinking about how different you are." Mariana stared at him, her eyes shining with something he couldn't decipher. "You don't even know me, Rodrigo." "Then let me get to know you." He took a step forward, shortening the distance between them. Her heart was beating so loudly that he could almost hear it. When his lips brushed hers, the world stopped. The kiss began hesitantly but soon turned into something hungry, as if they had both been waiting for it all their lives. And that's when the wedding night began to take shape. A night that Rodrigo would never have imagined, one that was about to reveal secrets that would change everything. Before we begin, a quick note: this video is a work of fiction, intended for mature audiences. It contains suggestive themes and passionate storytelling designed for entertainment purposes only. There is no explicit content, violence, or real events depicted here. Viewer discretion is advised. If you're ready for a thrilling romantic tale, sit back and enjoy. The air in the room seemed dense, charged with energy that neither of them could ignore. Rodrigo and Mariana's kiss had started as a spark, but now it was a fire that consumed any attempt at rationality. He pulled her closer, his hands firmly on her waist, feeling the warmth of her body through the light fabric of her dress. Mariana responded with a mixture of shyness and desire, her fingers hesitantly trailing up his shoulders until they tangled in his hair. Rodrigo could think of nothing else but her, the jasmine scent of her perfume, the softness of her skin, the way her lips molded to his. Everything was new, intoxicating. He slowly guided her to the edge of the bed, his green eyes fixed on hers, looking for any sign of retreat. But Mariana didn't flinch. On the contrary, she stared at him with an intensity that made him shudder. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice hoarse, almost unrecognizable to himself. It wasn't just a question of consent. He needed to know if she was as lost in that moment as he was. Mariana bit her lower lip, a gesture that almost made him lose control. "I want this, Rodrigo. But there's something you need to know first." He stopped, his hand still resting on the curve of her hips. His heart raced. "What?" She took a deep breath, looking away for a moment before facing him again. Her cheeks were flushed, and there was a glint of vulnerability in her brown eyes. "I've never been with anyone. Not like this." Rodrigo blinked, trying to process her words. For a moment, he thought he'd heard wrong. "You mean you're a virgin?" She nodded, her face now red with embarrassment. "I know it sounds ridiculous. I'm 28 and I've never felt it was the right time or the right person. Until now." The confession washed over him like a wave. Rodrigo took a step back, not out of rejection, but out of sheer amazement. He had expected many things from that evening. Passion, perhaps. A game of seduction with an experienced woman who knew what she wanted. But this was different. It was unexpected, almost sacred, and somehow, it made everything even more intense. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asked, his voice softening as he tried to understand. "I didn't know how to tell you. And I didn't want you to see me as less for it." Mariana crossed her arms, as if protecting herself from a judgment that never came. Rodrigo shook his head, a crooked smile appearing on his lips. "Less, Mariana. You have no idea what this means to me." He moved closer again, holding her face between his hands with a delicacy that contrasted with the fire still burning inside him. "You chose this. You chose me. That's incredible." Her eyes widened in surprise at his reaction. "Don't you think it's strange?" "No. I think you're brave. And now, I want to do it right." He pulled her in for another kiss, slow this time, as if he were savoring every second. There was a promise in that gesture. He wasn't going to rush anything. He wasn't going to let this moment be anything less than perfect. Mariana relaxed in his arms, her nervousness giving way to a shy confidence. She slid her hands down his chest, feeling the muscles under his shirt. Rodrigo responded by trailing his lips down her neck. Every touch was electric. Every sigh from her encouraged him to continue. He laid her gently on the bed, his body hovering over hers but in no hurry. His hands explored her curves with reverence, tracing invisible lines that made her arch her back. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against her skin, his lips brushing her shoulder as he carefully unzipped her dress. Mariana shivered under his touch, but not from fear. It was desire, mixed with the novelty of it all. She grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer as if she wanted to merge with him. "Rodrigo." His name escaped her lips like a whisper, and it was enough to ignite the moment even more. He kissed her again, deep and passionate, while her hands clumsily tried to open the buttons of his shirt. He laughed softly, helping her, and soon, the garment fell to the floor, revealing the defined chest she was now touching with curiosity and admiration. The night progressed at its own pace, a dance of discovery and surrender. Rodrigo kept control, guiding her patiently, attentive to her every reaction. When her dress finally slipped to the side, he stopped for a moment, just admiring her. Mariana was a perfect contrast between strength and fragility. And at that moment, she was his. Completely, irrevocably. "Do you trust me?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. And with that word, the final barrier between them fell. Passion enveloped him like a storm. But Rodrigo didn't let it be just instinct. He wanted her to feel everything, the warmth, the connection, the care. Every movement was calculated to bring unhurried pleasure. Every kiss laden with a silent promise. Mariana surrendered little by little, soft moans escaping as she discovered sensations she had never imagined. And then, at the height of that night, when their bodies were so close that they seemed to be one, Rodrigo felt something that went beyond the physical. It was as if, in that mutual surrender, they had found something that neither of them knew they were looking for. The revelation of her virginity wasn't just a detail. It was a symbol of a trust that shook him to the core. When they finally collapsed, exhausted onto the sheets, panting and entwined, Rodrigo pulled Mariana to his chest, feeling her heartbeat against his. "You were incredible," he whispered, kissing the top of her head. She smiled, snuggling closer. "You too." The wedding night had been more than a winning bet, it had been the start of something neither of them could have predicted. The morning sun streamed through the curtains of the suite, bathing the room in golden hues. Rodrigo woke up to the warmth of Mariana's body still glued to his, her brown hair spread across the pillow like a perfect frame. He smiled, almost incredulously, as he watched her sleep. The night before had been a whirlwind of emotions, passion, discovery, a connection he hadn't expected to feel with someone who, until a few hours ago, was a stranger. But now, with the silence of the morning, questions began to arise in his mind. Who is she, anyway? Why would a woman like Mariana, so beautiful, intelligent, and full of mystery, agree to marry a stranger for a bet? She had said in the car that she needed something only he could offer. Something other than money. What was it? Rodrigo felt a tightness in his chest. A mixture of curiosity and a slight fear that he couldn't explain. He got up carefully, so as not to wake her, put on a robe, and went down to the kitchen. While the coffee was going, he picked up his cell phone and hesitated. He wanted to call Gabriel, to demand more details about how he found Mariana. But something stopped him. Perhaps it would be better to hear it from her. After all, after the night they had had, he felt he deserved the truth. When he returned to the bedroom with 2 mugs of coffee, Mariana was already awake, sitting up in bed with the sheet covering her body. Her gaze was distant, almost melancholy, and it caught him off guard. "Good morning," he said, offering her a smile and a mug. "Good morning," she replied, accepting the coffee with a shy nod. There was a tension in the air that hadn't existed the night before, as if the daylight had brought out something that the darkness had hidden. Rodrigo sat down next to her, studying her. "Are you all right?" "Different." She took a sip of her coffee before answering, her eyes fixed on the mug. I'm fine. Just thinking about how quickly it all happened. Yesterday, I was just me. And now? She paused, looking at him. Now I'm your wife. He laughed quietly, trying to lighten the mood. Yeah, I'm trying to understand that part too. But I'm not going to lie, Mariana, yesterday was special. More than I imagined when I accepted that crazy bet. Her face softened with a smile, but there was something behind it. A shadow he couldn't ignore. I didn't imagine it would be like this either, she admitted. You surprise me, Rodrigo. Then why do I feel like you're hiding something? The words came out before he could stop them, and her smile faltered. Mariana took a deep breath, placing the mug on the bedside table. Because I am. But it's not what you think. It's nothing that's going to hurt you, I swear. Just, give me some time to tell you, okay? I promise you'll know everything. Rodrigo frowned, torn between pressuring her and respecting her request. The night before had created a bond between them, but this mystery was like a crack in what they were starting to build. All right, he finally said. But I want the truth, Mariana. Whatever it is. She nodded, relieved, and for a moment, the silence returned. They had coffee together, exchanged a few light words about the view from the balcony, but the tension remained. Then his cell phone vibrated on the dresser, a message from Gabriel. So, how was your evening with the mystery bride? I hope it was worth the $1,000,000. Rodrigo replied with a laughing emoji, but the word mysterious kept echoing in his head. He needed answers but decided he would play her game, at least for now. The day passed in a strange normality. He showed Mariana around. They had lunch by the pool, and little by little, she began to loosen up again. She laughed at his jokes, told stories of her childhood in a small town in the countryside, but avoided any mention of why she had come there. Rodrigo noticed every deviation, every hesitation, and his desire to understand who she was only grew. In the evening, as they watched the sunset from the balcony, Mariana approached him, resting her head on his shoulder. Thank you for not pressuring me, she murmured. I know it's not easy for you. He put his arm around her, feeling her warmth against him. I trust you. But I'm not going to lie, I'm dying of curiosity. She laughed, a light sound that made him smile too. You'll survive just a little longer. But the peace of that moment was interrupted by an unexpected sound. The mansion's intercom rang. The security guard informed him that there was a delivery for Mariana. Rodrigo arched an eyebrow in surprise. Are you expecting something? She went pale for a second but quickly pulled herself together. Yeah, just something I asked for before I came here. Nothing much. He accompanied her to the entrance, where a motorcycle courier delivered a small box with no visible sender. Mariana took it with trembling hands, and when he asked if he could open it right there, she shook her head. Later. It's personal. That was the first clear sign that something was wrong. Rodrigo let it pass, but the seed of doubt was already planted. Who was that woman he had shared a bed with the night before? What was she hiding? Later, while Mariana was showering, he looked at the box left on the dresser in the bedroom. He wasn't going to open it, he wasn't that kind of man, but the temptation was great. Then her cell phone, forgotten next to the box, lit up with a notification. A partial message appeared on the screen. Mari, did you get it? He already knows about the rest was blocked, but it was enough to make Rodrigo's heart race. Knows what? What was she planning? When she came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, he was standing there, arms crossed. Mariana, he said, his voice firm, I think the time for waiting is over. What's going on here? She froze, her eyes wide, and in that moment, he knew that the next conversation would change everything. The silence in the room was deafening. Mariana stood paralyzed in the bathroom doorway, the towel still clinging to her body, her wet hair dripping onto the marble floor. Her brown eyes, which had shone with desire and confidence the night before, were now filled with something Rodrigo couldn't decipher, fear, perhaps. Guilt. He stood, arms crossed, gaze fixed on her, as if he could see through the layers of secrets she carried. I saw the message, Mariana, he said, his voice firm but not shouting. He already knows about what? What should I know? She opened her mouth to reply, but no sound came out. Instead, she took a hesitant step backward, as if to escape the conversation. This only fueled his frustration. Don't run away from me now, he continued, taking a step forward. After everything that happened yesterday, I deserve to know what's going on. Who are you really? Mariana took a deep breath, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of the world had finally brought her down. Okay, she murmured, almost inaudibly. I'll tell you. But please, let me get dressed first. I don't want to do it like this. Rodrigo nodded, although impatience burned in his chest. He turned away while she grabbed an outfit from the closet, one of the many he had sent her to buy that morning, anticipating that she would need something for the next few days. When he turned around again, she was dressed in a light blouse and jeans, sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped in her lap. I didn't lie about everything, she began, her voice shaking. My name is Mariana. I'm 28. And yes, I've never been with anyone before you. But the reason I'm here wasn't just Gabriel's bet. Rodrigo felt a chill run down his spine. So what is it? Is he involved in this? Not exactly. She hesitated, looking down at her hands before continuing. I met Gabriel a few months ago by chance, at a charity event. He was talking about you, how impulsive you are, how you love a challenge, and I saw an opportunity. An opportunity for what? He sat down in the armchair opposite her, keeping his distance but without taking his eyes off her. Mariana swallowed. My sister, Clara, is ill. Very ill. She has a rare condition, and the treatment costs more than I could ever afford on my own. I work as a freelance designer, but it's not enough. When Gabriel joked about this bet, I asked him to include me. I said I'd do anything if he'd help me save Clara. Rodrigo blinked, processing the words. So you married me for money? No. She raised her face, her eyes watering. It wasn't just that. I could have asked Gabriel for the money or tried something else. But when he showed me a picture of you, when he talked about you, I wanted to meet you. And yesterday, when we... She stopped, blushing. It wasn't a pretense, Rodrigo. I felt everything you felt. He was silent for a moment, trying to fit the pieces together. The initial anger gave way to mixed feelings, relief that she wasn't a cold opportunist, but also a twinge of betrayal that she had hidden something so big. What about the box? The message, he asked, pointing to the object on the dresser. Mariana stood up and picked up the box, opening it carefully. Inside was a bottle of medicine and a note. She handed him the note. It's from my best friend, the only person who knows about the plan. The medicine is for CL. Clara. The message was to confirm that I had managed to talk to you about it. Rodrigo read the note in silence. Mari, did you manage it? Does he already know about the plan to save Clara? Let me know. I'm rooting for you. He folded the paper and looked at her. Why didn't you tell me right away? Because I was afraid, she admitted, her voice breaking. Afraid that you'd see me as a gold digger, or that you'd say no. And after yesterday, I didn't want to ruin what we had. It was real, Rodrigo. At least for me. He stood up and walked over to her. Her face was wet with tears now, and something inside him broke at seeing her so vulnerable. You should have trusted me, he said softly. And now? I'm not the kind of guy to let someone down. Especially for a cause like this. Mariana sniffled, wiping her face with the back of her hand. I know that now. I'm sorry. Rodrigo took a deep breath, torn between a desire to hug her and the need to understand everything. How much does your sister's treatment cost? $1,000,000, she replied, almost in a whisper. That's why Gabriel's bet seemed perfect. He said you'd never turn down a challenge, and I bet you could help me. A bitter smile appeared on his lips. Gabriel, you clever son of a. Did he know that all along? I don't know, she said. He just gave me the chance. The rest was up to me. Rodrigo ran a hand through his hair, laughing humorlessly. So I won his bet and still left with a wife who needs me to save her sister. What a twist. Mariana looked at him hesitantly. Will you help me? He remained silent for a long moment, his eyes fixed on hers. Then he stepped forward and held her face with his hands, as he had done the night before. I'm going to help Clara. Not because you asked me to, but because I want to. But that doesn't change the fact that you owe me a full explanation. And trust, Mariana. If this thing between us is going to amount to anything, I need it. She nodded, the tears returning, but now with relief. I promise. No more secrets. He pulled her into an embrace, feeling her body relax against his. But when his lips met hers in an impulsive kiss, the flame from the night before flared up again. It was different now, not just passion, but something deeper, more dangerous. They were bound to each other, and what would come next was still a mystery. While they were lost in the heat of that moment, his cell phone rang. It was Gabriel. Rodrigo ignored it, but the message that followed made his blood run cold. Careful, buddy. She hasn't told you everything. Gabriel's message burned in Rodrigo's mind like an ember. Careful, buddy. She hasn't told you everything. He held his cell phone tightly, his heart racing, while Mariana watched him with a mixture of confusion and concern. The kiss they had just shared still hung in the air, warm and charged, but now there was a new shadow between them. What's wrong? She asked, her voice low, almost fearful. Rodrigo hesitated, but decided to play it open. He showed her the screen of his cell phone. Gabriel sent this. What else haven't you told me, Mariana? Her eyes went wide, and for a moment, he thought she was going to fall apart again. But instead, she took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders, as if gathering her courage. I told you the main thing. About Clara. About why I'm here. But there's something I haven't mentioned because I didn't know how you'd react. Then tell me now, he demanded, his voice firm but without losing the softness she seemed to awaken in him. Mariana crossed her arms, as if protecting herself. When I said I'd seen a photo of you and wanted to meet you, it wasn't just curiosity. I'd seen you before. 2 years ago, at a technology event in Sao Paulo. You gave a talk on innovation, and I was in the audience. I was delighted, Rodrigo, not just because of what you said, but because you seemed so alive. I've never forgotten that day. When Gabriel talked about you, I already had a reason to want to be here. It wasn't just Clara, it was you. He blinked, surprised. You knew me and you never said anything? I didn't know how to say it without sounding crazy, she admitted, a shy smile appearing on her lips. Hi, I saw you at a lecture 2 years ago and I've been thinking about you ever since. Not exactly a normal opening line. Rodrigo laughed, the sound echoing in the room and easing the tension. No, but it would have been a great way to start. He moved closer to her, his anger dissipated by the raw honesty in her words. So that bet was just an excuse to get to me? Not an excuse, she corrected, her eyes shining with something he now recognized as affection. A chance. I needed to save my sister. But I also wanted to know if that man from the lecture still existed. And he does, Rodrigo. You're more than I imagined. He stared at her for a long moment, feeling the weight of that confession. Then, without saying a word, he pulled her to him, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was both a relief and a promise. Mariana responded with equal fervor, her hands running up his chest until they wrapped around his neck. The passion of their wedding night was back in full force, but now there was something more, a connection that went beyond physical desire. You're crazy, he murmured against her lips, chuckling softly as he guided her back to the bed. But I like that. She smiled, a mischievous glint in her eyes. And I like you. What followed was a dance of surrender and passion. Rodrigo laid her down on the sheets, their bodies fitting together as if they were made for each other. He traced the outline of her face with his fingers, sliding down her neck to her shoulders, each touch filled with reverence. Mariana arched beneath him, her soft sigh filling the room as her hands explored the muscles of his back, pulling him closer. The heat between them grew, a storm of sensations enveloping them completely. He kissed her neck, feeling her racing pulse beneath his lips, while her hands gripped his hair, urging him on. It was overwhelming yet controlled, a flame that burned fiercely without crossing the boundaries of what could be expressed in words. Every movement was a celebration of what they found in each other, a blend of passion and tenderness that left them breathless. When they finally collapsed, exhausted and entwined in the sheets, sweat glistening on their skin, Rodrigo pulled Mariana to his chest, feeling her heartbeat sync with his. "You're mine now," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "And I'm not letting you go." She laughed, snuggling closer. "I don't want to go." Days later, their lives took a turn neither had expected. Rodrigo transferred the money for Clara's treatment without hesitation, and Mariana took him to meet her sister in a small countryside town. Clara, a 20-year-old with eyes as deep as Mariana's, hugged Rodrigo with tears streaming down her face, thanking him for saving her life. He just smiled, saying it was the least he could do for the family that was now his own. Gabriel, of course, didn't let it slide. When they met again, he handed over the $2 million from the bet with a grin that said he knew more than he let on. "I knew you two would hit it off," he teased. "But I'll admit, I didn't expect it to turn into love." Rodrigo slapped his friend's shoulder. "You're a genius idiot, you know that." "And you're a lucky bastard," Gabriel shot back, winking at Mariana. The marriage, which had started as an impulsive bet, became real. They chose to stay together, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to. Their nights remained filled with passion, their days brimming with laughter and plans. Mariana brought lightness to Rodrigo's life, while he gave her the security she'd never had. On a warm summer night, months later, they stood on the mansion's balcony, gazing at the stars. Mariana rested her head on his shoulder, and he pulled her into a slow, promise-filled kiss. "I love you," she said, her words simple yet heavy with everything they'd been through. "I love you more," he replied, smiling against her lips. And so, what began as a game ended as eternal love, overwhelming, true, and above all, happy.